Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Quality Talks podcast. I'm Stu Day, one of your hosts. This is episode 7. And in this episode, we're going to be talking all about performance engineering. So we've kind of entitled it, or titled it, should I say, Need for Speed. I know, but there's not going to be any Tom Cruise. There's not going to be any Top Gun. No, we're going to have 2 even more amazing people joining the show today. Tomi Tiihonen and Hardik Patel, better known as Harry. They're going to be our fighter pilots today as we focus on talking about performance engineering. 2 of the very best in the industry. I've known both Tomi and Harry for at least since 2016, 2017, that sort of time. I've known Tomi, and Harry's been around 5 years as well. So I've learned so much from both of them over that time on this topic, and yeah, I can't thank them enough, to be fair. So it's really great that we're going to have them on the show, and they're sharing all their experience with us, and knowledge around what it means to have a career in performance engineering, how it's evolved over many years, and we'll touch on different things around maybe why it's not so thought about. There's the priority maybe isn't put on performance engineering quite as much as, say, functional or functionality, should I say, of the software. But yeah, we'll touch on all different sorts of things. And guess what? It's Black Friday as well. I mean, how could we have planned this any better? So yeah, we're going to be talking about performance engineering on Black Friday, and it's almost like we planned it. So before we get into the actual show, or actual episode, should I say, as always, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that's been subscribing to our YouTube channels, Spotify, sharing the posts, sharing the recordings around, watching, listening. Yeah, just a massive thank you. I mean, I think it's when we kicked this off back in earlier this year, we didn't think we'd get this much following, to be fair. So it's really amazing that we are where we are, and it keeps growing. So that's because of everybody that's watching and listening and sharing, and also the feedback you're giving as well. The feedback really helps. So whether you're commenting on our posts, whether you're contributing to the episodes with the questions that you're sharing, all of that makes us provide you with better content. So thank you for that. Just on numbers, really, we're up to we've made it, people. We've gone over the 150 subscribers on YouTube. We're up to 157 subscribers. We've had 22 additional subscribers in the last 28 days. I'm well chuffed with that. That's awesome. We're well over 650 followers on our LinkedIn page now as well. So that's incredible. All our posts that we put on there about new episodes, etc. More content will be going on there moving forward. And obviously that's where your opportunity is to get involved in the episodes. If you want to either be on the show, if you've got a topic you want to come and talk to us about, drop us a message, talk to us, let us know. And we'll get it arranged, and we'll get you on the show, and yeah, we can have a great chat. But also, if you want to get involved in the episodes by leaving questions for our guests or anything like that, it's another great way to help us out and be part of the podcast and what we're building. So yeah, so massive thank you there. I've got some good news. I've also got some more good news. So that obviously Chris hasn't been around for a while, but he's coming back. He's going to be coming back very, very soon. Oh, I'm so buzzing. I can't wait to get my big Geordie teddy bear back. There has been a big Geordie hole in my heart, as you all know, over the last few few weeks. But yeah, Chris is on his way back. Cannot wait. So keep your eyes peeled for his return of the Chris. Not quite the same as Return of the Mac, I know, but we can work with it. So yeah, so Chris is on his way back. So that'll be awesome. So what else has been happening over the sort of last couple of weeks? So I've had a few public speaking events, I guess. Yeah, events. Yeah. So I think on the last episode where we had Joe on, I mentioned that I was talking at the Lambda Test Voices of Community, and also last week I was on the Ministry of Testing Planet. Both of those were recorded, so obviously they'll be available to people to view. The Lambda Test one is on YouTube, and the Ministry of Test will be on the Ministry of Testing website for all subscribers. So I was talking around the topic of continuous quality, which is a very, very hot topic for me, very close to my heart, something that I've been really focused on since around 2020, I guess, and just building and evolving my knowledge and experience and ideas around what it really means to drive quality continuously into not just the products that we build, but our ways of working, our culture, our people, all those kind of things. And I talk about what it means to sort of build a culture of quality, and what those quality contributors are. So yeah, if you're interested, there'll be a couple of talks that are out there that you can have a watch of. But also, I don't know. Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to commit to it on here. So I'm going to be writing a book. So I've decided that I'm going to be writing a book, and it's all going to be around continuous quality. So that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. I don't quite know, how long it's going to take me, but it'll happen. It'll happen. So, but it's such a big topic. You can't really cover it off on 30-minute talks and, blog posts and stuff like that. So I felt like, probably now was a good time to start putting it on paper. And yeah, I've always wanted to write a book. And I've taken some inspiration from other peers in our industry who've done the same, and encouragement from others and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll be out in a not too distant future, in the next 12 months at least. But yeah, and look, if nobody reads it, then at least I can say I've written a book. It is what it is. So yeah, so that would be really cool. And this coming week, I am going to be up in Coventry, Ministry of Testing Coventry, where I'm going to be running a sort of an interactive session around what is quality, and helping and sort of just delving into how we can help our teams, our people, organizations, leadership, so on, help them try and understand what quality is, and how we can sort of build that culture to push it forward and evolve our thinking and mindset and stuff like that. So yeah, so there's lots going on. Also, a couple of weeks ago now, actually, though, I was in London and went to see the Back to the Future musical, which is absolutely incredible. So anybody that is interested in either musical theatre, Back to the Future, just go and see it. It's incredible. The kids loved it, and I think I was the biggest kid out of all of us, to be fair. But yeah, it was really, really good. I wouldn't mind going and seeing it again. Okay, so shall we get into the episode? need for speed, all about performance engineering. And as I say, we've got Tomi and Harry joining us to delve into their worlds, let's say. So let's get them on now. Hey guys, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Yeah, good.
Really good. Stuart, how are you?
Thanks, Stuart.
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. It's great to have you both on. And I could say that we planned this, but we definitely didn't plan this, that it's Black Friday when we're recording an episode about performance engineering. So I think there's going to be some good topics and discussions that we can have around that throughout the show. It's great to have you both on, guys. And obviously we've known each other for a few years. So what I'll do is I'll just hand over to both of you to kind of do a bit of an intro for those that don't know who you are. So Tomi, if you want to just talk a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I've been doing performance engineering and testing and that sort of stuff a bit over 20 years now. Got into it purely accidentally. I was doing support for a US bank, and we were looking at some options how we can measure how well our applications are working, and I just had an opportunity at that point to kind of put my hand up, and I saw kind of first how these tools were used, and back in the day was the Mercury interactive tool set, so Load Runner and so on. And I just really liked it. I liked the kind of the curious aspect of investigating issues and trying to understand how things work. And I was straight away as this is what I want to do. And then I got trained up, and I've been doing this, like I say, since then. I haven't really changed my career path differently in between. And I'm still at it.
Nice. And I think we met in, was it 2016, Tomi? I think we first met, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And for those watching, Tomi doesn't look any different than what he looked in 2016. So clearly life's treating him well.
I have a painting here somewhere.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure it's really true the case. I've seen some of my pictures from 2016. I don't totally agree, but yeah, thank you. I'll take that.
And Harry, how about yourself?
Right. So I have around 16 years of performance engineering experience, and currently I am leading team of performance engineers at Denem. Just like Tomi, I also went into performance engineering or testing space accidentally. But having said that, I've completed my computer engineering. And as part of computer engineering, I was very much passionate about writing my code efficiently. Like at that time, I was writing code in C, C++. And every time I execute the code, I always look at how long did it take? And I always endeavor to kind of reduce the time and so on. But as time progressed, one of my manager, she came to a cubicle where 4 people were sitting, and she said 2 people on the right join performance engineering team. And that's how I started my performance engineering career. And since then, I always liked the art of creating performance test scripts, simulating multiple users with a single script. But at the same time, as Tomi mentioned, that the investigating performance issues are also very exciting. And when you find an issue, I think it's quite satisfying as well. So since then, I've been enjoying my time in performance engineering space.
So Harry, so in terms of like, little did you know back then that decision made for you by somebody would ultimately drive your career in the direction that it's driven you, right?
That is correct. And actually, I was very happy that I got put into performance engineering. Well, at the time in 2008, financial crisis were going on, and I was on a bench for a couple of months waiting to get the work where I can actually contribute to a project. So I'm really glad that I was selected for performance engineering. But yes, that decision was made by somebody else, but then that person really supported me well in growing in performance engineering space.
Yeah. And just and talking about the we're talking about, I mean, this episode is about performance engineering, and I've been in the industry for 26-ish years, but it's only been more over recent years. There's been more talk about performance engineering versus performance testing. Now, that might just be my experience. I don't know, but is that same from your both perspectives, or has it always been like more of a performance engineering thing rather than testing alone?
I can have a stab, and then Harry
Yeah.
he can help me out. I think it's absolutely right. Yeah. So when I started, it was performance testing. It was literally write a test and see what it looks like, and then send the problem to the development engineering. That was the kind of the setup. But I do think personally, I was involved with development quite early already. It wasn't called performance engineering before I was already doing that sort of work. So, and like Harry, you have development experience, and I had some development experience as well. So I could look at the code and say, well, maybe this is the area we could, we could help with. And I think maybe there's a lot of other people like us. They could do a bit of both. And it's kind of evolved over time. And I think the performance engineering, the label itself, is just to take away that barrier and say, well, if you can help running this test and help us tune the software or identify other issues, then it's maybe better covered under this umbrella rather than just having the testing. But yeah, it was quite natural, I thought. It wasn't like I would say top-down kind of, hey, this is now what we're going to call you guys. It was more natural progression, I would think.
Yeah,
I'd agree with Tomi as well that it was just a natural evolution around performance testing to performance engineering. And as Tomi mentioned, that initially most of us started as performance tester because we already had probably like a solution architect role that was very predominant at that time, who were looking after the performance management and so on. But as in we started around performance testing, as Tomi mentioned, that we were able to look at certain tools like Dynatrace, New Relic, and looking at those tools, we were able to use them in a way that would give us more information around how much execution is performed by one function, or if there is a memory leak happening, where that is originating from. And with that information, we were able to look at the code and actually recommend engineers that this is where probably we should be looking at, because that is where the bottleneck is. And that's how I think it kind of evolved into performance engineering role. I don't remember prior to those tools, performance engineering role was even more widely used.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on, Tomi.
I was going to say that I think it also helps maybe other engineering, that removing that label, and a software engineer can get involved in this field, right? So not being worried about being labeled as a tester, so to speak. That help other way as well. Yeah, like you say, I think that is a bit unclear, the history. I think for me, the title, because I think there's been other meanings for the title before that is what we think it is now.
Yeah, and just more generally around the art of performance engineering or performance testing, as it may have previously been known. Has the dynamic of the role and the what we're trying to achieve in those roles changed over that time?
Yeah, I guess one of the main things that has probably changed is earlier we were just validating the system from performance point of view, and then kind of passing it over to engineers or solution architects to kind of fix a problem if there is any. But now it's more around performance management as well, where we're looking at a system. We validate that, do we actually need to do even performance testing? Are there any monitoring solutions available? Are there any real need for performance testing and so on? For example, if there is a system that just runs in the background and even if it fails, or even if it runs for one day, there is no real impact to customer or any people using that system, then we are just looking at the monitoring. So it's more around performance management rather than just performance testing. And obviously, if there is an e-commerce website or any other system where system availability is critical, then performance testing makes more sense.
I think it goes together a little bit at the general kind of movement towards team being a single team rather than having this development and QA. I think we're kind of part of that, I would say. So I feel like that we are closer now, and we are more like part of a single team rather than a department that gets to deal with something type of thing. I think that's definitely something that has been very positive, I think. But I think it's just not just but in general the agile movement that's helped kind of bridge that gap, I think.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of falls in line with the whole quality engineering type movement and how that's evolved, and where does the performance side of that fit within, and so on. I mean, I've worked with you both, and over the last few years, and I've learned so much from you both on this topic and this, shifting my sort of mindset from it's all about performance testing to performance engineering and how we actually engineer the software to be performant and design it and so on and so on. And then you bring in the different dynamics of the different applications within the tech stack. So, when you think about a web front end, so a retail site, and what happens there, and then you've got the underlying, microservice architecture, and then it just starts getting more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? Complex.
Yes.
Feels like it gets more and more complex. So I mean, what's the difference now, say, between the monolith type systems that we used to have versus how we're building architecture now to be more layered and isolated in certain situations? What are the sort of I understand some of the benefits. I do understand the benefits of that type of architecture, but I'm guessing it also, from a performance perspective, creates different challenges. So what would you say that sort of the shift in the sort of the technology and how we're building our tech stacks, and the introduction of the cloud and all this other evolution, how has that sort of changed the way in which you approach it, and the level of complexity and the different elements you're having to think about?
Yeah, I think Harry, sorry. I think for me at least, I feel like it's a lot more complex now, and I do feel that the responsibility is shared, and sometimes maybe when responsibility is shared, it's like nobody's responsibility. There's a bit of element I find, like in my personal experience, that there perhaps been some negative effects because of that. So it's not all like we're always going the right direction and everything's getting better type of thing. I think that's definitely, it's a lot more complex picture, and it's harder to gauge the the customer experience and who's responsible for improving that type of thing. So it's a lot more complex picture, and I mean, it's definitely a challenge. I know a lot of people are now talking about maybe go back to monoliths. So who knows, right?
Trying to make their lives easier.
It's cyclical, right? So but I think it's more complex. But it's like we have to deal with. I think in general, software is more complex now than when all of us probably started, and it's just the nature of life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tomi as well around the complexity that has increased. But when we think about performance point of view, we might be hearing less of system availability in cloud world. Like when earlier we had monolith, we were running them on application servers. Then we had a big database at the back of it, and all the operation of probably, let's say, an e-commerce website were performing on one single server and probably one big database. What happens generally, if one element of the website slows down, that has knock-on effect on almost all the operations of the website, and that could actually bring the whole website down. Now, having the cloud or serverless architecture, even even server architecture within cloud, you have really good and microservices. That logic is kind of spread. So if one microservice is down, does not necessarily mean that the whole website is down. Obviously, if the service is responsible for payment, then obviously you cannot do the payment, but at least our customers can be still on the website browsing the product and those kind of things. So definitely performance, from performance point of view, in the monolith world, we are focusing on system stability and system availability. But now in microservice world, we are more focusing on the speed of the microservice rather than the service availability. So that I would say is probably the bigger difference. But as Tomi mentioned, that when microservices goes down, we need to, it's kind of, there is a team probably dedicated to it. But when the integration of various microservices go down, or let's say platform might be struggling, like I have seen incident in past where everything was working perfectly fine, but the cloud DNS server had some issue. Now, whose responsibility is that? And how do you even identify the DNS server is having some issue? Those kind of challenges sometimes are not identified, and suddenly it fixes on its own, and you don't even know that something got fixed. So there are other kind of challenges that this server cloud architecture and microservice architecture have introduced.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think it adds layers of safeguarding, but then at the same time, layers of uncertainty as to where does this problem actually lie. And I know, like Tomi, we had situations in the past where you could clearly see something wasn't right, but then trying to get our engineering teams to actually own that and understand it is a different challenge, right?
And you have to, like, you're not just looking at computing problems, you're looking at people problems at that point, right? So it can, and I think in our job that is part of it. It's not, we're not just dealing with computers. Having relationships and understanding how people operate is quite a big part of it, actually.
Yeah. I just want to touch on an area that has always, well, still does find quite challenging in terms of when we talk about, and I and you guys know that I don't like this term, non-functional requirements. Right. I'm trying to redefine them as quality attributes rather than non-functional requirements, because as soon as you start saying anything's non-functional, people generally just go, oh, that's not important.
Yeah, it goes to the bottom of the pile, right?
It goes to the bottom of the pile. Yeah, absolutely. So how can we bring it? How can we surface it up? But whatever we end up calling them, it's never been. I guess who's really accountable for them? Because we say our product team should know what the volumes of X should be and this, but is that fair?
Yeah.
Where can we start getting that, I guess, more enriched information from the, how can we define what those volumes may need to be, and therefore what the load impact needs to be, and so on and so on. From both your experiences, how have you sort of dealt with that over time to get a better idea of what it is we really need to support in terms of load? Because the product team won't know necessarily, and it's unfair. You've already said it's complex and so on.
I think, if I share my experience, probably like 10 years ago, we were getting information from the logs that we have this much volume, and working with the product, we were also trying to understand the feature that is going live, how much impact that will have on a volume. But then there is also another dynamic, how it is being implemented. And that would also determine how much volume we will have on the backend server and so on. So you're right. I think there are multiple functions are responsible to understand what should be the volume requirement, or how much volume the system should support and so on. But as you mentioned around non-functional requirement, or like quality attribute, that's a better term. How fast that operation would be. I think combination of product owner platform engineering, or if you have SRE team, insights and analytics team, and then performance engineering team, all working together, figure out on what volume should look like. And I have seen the similar trend nowadays as well. And the things get increasingly challenging because we are developing so many features. We don't know certain features would bring how much traffic, how much load on the system. So probably we have overly simplified, at least at Denem, where we are looking at 50% year-on-year growth. And that kind of help us to say, well, if we have a spike or if we have even additional volume that's coming, we might be covered. So that's how we are tackling. But in past, we are definitely being more scientific around how much volume we will have on the system. And that was because earlier, as I mentioned, it was more like monolith. You have to manage the capacity. Now, because of the cloud technology and microservices, the capacity is not a real challenge, and hence we can actually simplify it to certain number of year-on-year growth. What do you think, Tomi? What's your perception of it?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think also I was thinking, on a very basic terms, if whatever you want to call it, attribute or requirement, if it's not a defined requirement or attribute, then it will not get built. If it's not defined, I think often these requirements are seen as test requirements.
Yes.
But it's really a requirement for building systems, right? Building software and building solutions. And often, and I think it's quite human. I think what happens is it's hard. It's very hard to come up with the numbers. Something looking at projecting in the future. Particularly maybe it's a brand new application. You have no idea how many people are going to be there. Yeah. And people are kind of afraid to say, because in case they are wrong. Because people sometimes can be quite judgmental. Oh, you told us it's going to be 1 million people and it's 10. So I think it's about maybe handholding as well a little bit. To say, well, let's start with something and then we have something. But the basic fundamental, if you don't have a requirement, then the developer is not going to build thinking about that requirement. So I think we need to have something in place. But it is difficult because I think there's fear of people not wanting to kind of commit to saying something that might be entirely rubbish. so there's definitely something me and Harry would help, sitting down with the right people and say, well, let's, and I've done like questionnaire type of approach, like a form, say, well, okay, let's sketching it out, and then then it turns into a conversation, and then something will come out of that. But yeah, I think fundamentally you need to have something, whatever it's called. I don't personally, I don't have too strong opinion, but I think that non-functional non-functional requirement is a bit poor name because they're, like you say, it will probably be seen as not as important as a functional requirement, so to speak.
Yeah. I really like how you framed that there, Tomi, in terms of working with with product and bringing it into making it a conversation rather than tell me what it is you need. And the same thing from your perspective, Harry, where you're saying like bringing people together and all those different all the different knowledge bases, so to speak, can then feed into trying to figure this out. And I think it's I say often from experience, and obviously us having worked together, and we've kind of gone through some of this stuff together over the years, figuring out how to connect with people and ensure that maybe an area that they don't necessarily understand, you're able to guide them through that and use your expertise to kind of go, well, like you say, let's start with something, because if we don't start with something, we're never going to build anything. So I mean, that's really good.
Stuart, if I may like to add one more point. So that's definitely that's where probably majority of situations are. But you might find sometimes there are certain situations where somebody is really saying, this is how I want things. For example, I really like Spotify CEO, Daniel Ek, and he kind of said, his CTO came in and said, oh, we can actually stream and it takes around 400 or something millisecond. He said, that's not good enough. I'd like to have 200 millisecond as part of streaming, right? And that led their engineering team to actually innovate another type of HTTP protocol. And because of that, currently we are able to stream or listen to the music on Spotify. So there are certain ambitious leader or people who know that this is how I want my product to have to look like from speed point of view.
Yeah, I mean it's fantastic if you have that, right? But it's quite rare, isn't it? Like this kind of Steve Jobs, absolute, dictatorship, but who knows exactly what the people will use or will like, right? So, but it's quite rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's.
I mean, if only Netflix knew for the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight.
Yeah, exactly.
But all joking aside, I mean, how exposed like companies are now? There's no hiding, is there?
Yeah.
There's absolutely. If you're a streaming service, there's no hiding. If you're a retailer, there's no hiding. It's there, and also the social media side of things, you're just going to get slammed.
Yeah, people are ruthless, aren't they? If they see, if they see you struggling, they'll be telling everybody about it. Yes, absolutely, yes. And actually, it's quite an interesting aspect of our job because there's a fair amount of kind of stress and risk that we are involved with because often we'll be the person that will make a recommendation whether that will be okay today on a Black Friday or not. So that is definitely something that is part of the gig.
Yeah,
and
so
be able to do that as well. Yeah.
So both of you being on this podcast today on Black Friday, you're sitting there like you're still monitoring stuff, right? Like.
Well,
turn the phone
just
off.
In case.
I'd like to definitely share like how the situations were 10 years ago. I do remember that I used to work for one of the e-commerce giants in US, and we actually had night shift for monitoring. So we were literally in office at night monitoring the system, make sure that if anything goes wrong, we are there to support and assist. And now we are obviously recording podcasts. I'm not even looking at the system that how it is performing because now if something goes wrong, we do get alerts and we are there to respond and so on. So that's what and probably we are more confident having the tools and the testing that's probably available to us, and hence we're a little bit stress-free, but not that still stressed, as Tomi said, but definitely not that stressed how probably 10 years ago.
I think we both have had our nightmare kind of memories from certain events where but like you say, I think the whole profession has matured. I think we have better monitoring in place, a better understanding of and then cloud is probably played a factor in that, right? So I think that has been improved, I would say.
Just talking about the cloud side. So there's a couple of things I want to pick up on in there. One is around the monitoring side of things. And in days gone by, when the focus was maybe more on performance testing, people do you think that people connect monitoring? Now we're in a performance engineering world. Do you think people connect monitoring and observability into performance engineering as a thing more so now than ever before? So we used to have monitoring before, but maybe not to the scale that we have it now. And but to your point, Harry, it's the monitoring and observability that give us the confidence, give us the visibility. So they kind of go hand in hand.
That is correct.
More so than ever.
No, that is correct. So even when we run our performance test, how would we know that something's gone wrong? Obviously, we rely on our test-generated results or test-generated metrics for the journey that we are trying to simulate. But the first question would be on us when certain things does not look right, then we will be actually questioning, is our script having the issue? Are the test data that we have used correct? And all those things can be eliminated if you have right level of monitoring and observability of the system. So in past as well, whenever we used to run tests, I'm sure probably Tommy can back me up, when we were using HP Load Runner, they also had capability to kind of connect to the server, collect CPU, memory, and so on. But nowadays things are a little bit different. We also want to make sure that we are collecting data for the requests that we are generating. Now that's changed a little bit. Like if you're using Dynatrace, then it gives you option to give a virtual username, iteration name, and so on, and you can actually pinpoint the virtual user and iteration name within Dynatrace monitoring to kind of see what happened with that request. And that feature is kind of available for almost all the monitoring and observability platform. And that kind of help us to stitch everything together. For example, if you're looking at something and that's taking longer duration, how do we know that it's not CDN? How do we know that it's not just application queue? How do we not know that it's application server, it's database server? So you need to have observability kind of end to end so that you can clearly say, this request was taking 3 seconds, 1 second is happening here, 2 seconds happening here, and so on. And then only we can kind of dig deeper. So monitoring observability is like really important to analyze performance test results, but as you mentioned, production monitoring as well.
Yeah.
Well, one thing to I have a little bit controversial opinion about observability. So hopefully,
yeah,
hopefully you
please.
don't mind.
We like controversy. Go on, Tommy.
Yeah. I think it is a like a huge promise, but I've not seen it fulfill its promise yet. I think it's coming back to your question of where's the responsibility of observability, who maintains it, and I feel it's kind of in a kind of floating in area. I think often it's owned by people who are more on the infrastructure side rather than the application side. Whereas us typically are more on the application side, and I think hasn't found its place yet. I think there's so much potential with observability. I think to replace some of the work we do personally. But it's the kind of the reactive observability hasn't really come there. I've been expecting it to kind of solve a lot of the problems that we have.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it will find its place, and I'm waiting for that.
Actually, I agree with you, Tommy.
No, it's a really good point.
Yeah, I agree with you as well, Tommy, because I have also noticed that some of the observability platform where you need like true observability, they're quite costly. Like even AWS X-Ray observability, if you really need to utilize it, you really have to spend so much money for it.
Yeah.
So that is, as you mentioned, we still haven't unlocked the potential of observability as much as we like to do it.
Yeah. I think that I'm really excited about that space, and I think it will bring tremendous value.
Yeah. In terms of the cloud, let's talk about the cloud. It's winter.
Somebody else's computer, yeah.
Yeah. They're sitting on a server, right? Yeah. So there's lots of clouds in the sky this time of year, but let's talk about the big cloud. The you know, I have an opinion on the cloud.
Right.
Right. Okay. That it's made us really lazy when it comes to sizing and things like that, because we've kind of gone, well, it'll auto scale, and we've got huge amounts of capacity, so we'll just up the limits, and I just think we've become so lazy now that we don't even think about it, but the cost that's then associated that we're spending, and just not even thinking about. Do you know what I mean? So I'm interested to get your opinions on the cloud.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think a lot of the companies went to cloud for the right reason, which is really for scalability, being able to scale. I mean, if you look at the typical kind of startup scenario, you need that. If you have exponential growth, you won't be able to manage it yourself. You'll need something like a cloud that can infinitely essentially scale.
Yeah.
But I think also a lot of people go on after that which don't have that need. They have probably fairly predictable growth, and they could have done it cheaper. But I think that was just the way the industry was moving. That is like this is the new thing, and then like you say, it's very easy now to spend on cloud, right?
Yeah.
You say, oh, we need some more boxes and or serverless instances or whatever, and it's very very simple to do because you don't need to really, you don't have those 6-week wait time for a new server type of thing. You just it's instantly there, and yeah, I mean I'm spending a lot of time currently at cloud costs, and I think it is getting bigger and bigger part of our job. So there is definitely a lot of savings that can be made in that space.
Yeah.
Sorry, Harry, I jumped in.
No, I agree. The reasoning behind a lot of enterprises to go to the cloud was mainly around the time to market and so on. But
Yeah.
at the same time, the growth as well. There were probably certain enterprises, probably didn't anticipate the growth that they're probably going to have, and suddenly they find themselves growing at the faster rate than it used to, and hence probably they went to the cloud and so on.
Yeah.
And sometimes what we see is there are so many applications within enterprise, and there are one or two applications which I'd like to call legacy application, which you need to run it, but it's very inefficient. And in order to make it efficient, you have to spend considerable amount of time probably re-engineering it and so on. So the cost of re-engineering versus increasing the compute and memory within cloud, if we kind of try to balance it, some enterprise go with the additional cost, right? But in my opinion, I think we should still look at that as some sort of inefficiency. So wherever probably cost doesn't work, I try to lean on, or I'm trying to lean on the compute inefficiency that requires higher carbon emissions. So the more you spend on cloud, that means the carbon emission is higher. And that is probably another way to bring it to life a little bit more for certain enterprises, because most of the enterprise have kind of pledge that they're going to reduce their carbon emission and so on. They probably do it for the physical items, but some enterprises probably forget that we also have the technology that runs on the cloud, and that has carbon emission as well. And in my opinion, a lot of cloud providers, they say that we are offsetting the carbon. But in my opinion, if we are using the electricity, that means we are still using it. So anything that's unwanted that we are spending, it's a saving, in my opinion. So we should still save as much as we can in terms of compute and usage of cloud.
Yeah, it's a really good angle to take, and I guess it really does then put the emphasis back on that promise of CO2 emissions and reducing them and stuff like that. Something that we've been looking at recently is sustainable testing and ensuring that our environments are using the right sizing and that kind of thing for that same very reason. But then also storage. How much storage do we need, and how are we archiving and not archiving, and all those different things. And I think sustainability with that lens on CO2 is a good angle to take in some of these conversations, because as I say, I think we have got lazy, but then to your point, Tommy, it's kind of opened up different doors for you guys in your industry to kind of go, well, we can help with this, right? We can have those look at what you're using and what you really need to use, and so I guess the dynamic of that has changed as well.
Yeah, but you're always competing, and I think that thanks for bringing that up, Harry. I think the environmental impact is a very important part of that, but you still have to also, you're always competing. Now our life, we're always competing with the functional work, the new features, kind of stuff. That is like an ongoing battle. Say, hey, we really want to save money, but also we need to have, need to support this new thing, the new bell that we'll build or whatever. So there's but I like that idea of kind of tying it together with the energy consumption. I mean, particularly now with the AI consuming as much energy as it does, I think it's a very important subject.
Yeah, all the data that's storing up and thinking about, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? So, we've got some questions. We've had some questions come through from the LinkedIn community. I think we've covered elements of some of these questions already, but and I know you guys have I shared these questions with you earlier as well. But I think there's a couple on here that we can sort of touch on if that's. Here's what. So you'll know Chris is my co-host on this show, right? And he's not been around for a few episodes. He'll be back. He's coming back.
Hello,
Don't
Chris.
worry. He's coming back. But say hi, Chris. Say hi, Chris. Hi, Chris. But he's getting involved and asking questions, right? So he's still part of the gang. So Chris has got a question. He's got a few questions, to be fair. But let me just read this one out. So, in a world where our consumers seemingly want things yesterday and expectations for tech to be lightning fast, have you ever come across a situation where fast speed resulted in a negative effect? So trying to push for that faster speed from a response time, etc. Have you seen instances where that's actually had a negative effect on the outcome? To say that the page speed is too quick, or
I do have a couple of examples. I do have a couple of examples, Stuart.
Go for it.
I'd probably take first example from backend point of view. So in past, we generally used to have like an application server, and then we have API server, and then we have database. So we improved the speed of application server or certain endpoint that was actually taking a little bit longer. And that endpoint started performing better as part of the load test. But little did we know that now that is putting more pressure on the API server that was kind of protected by the inefficiency of the application server. And that actually crashed the website. So sometimes improving speed in one element is not sufficient, and that could lead us to failure. And the other example is around front-end performance. It's a site speed example. So Google have introduced these 3 metrics for people that don't know. That one of the metric is called largest contentful pane. That is the perception of how fast page is being loaded. And then the second metric is around how responsive the web page is. So let's put ourselves into our customer situation. You're trying to access the website. As soon as you see something, that's a search bar. As soon as you see it, you want to click on it, right? That means the faster you load the page, you are interacting with the page faster, and page is still being loaded so that the responsive metric would be degraded. So there is a fine balance how fast you want to go to from LCP point of view and interaction to next pane point of view. This is the reason some of the website actually don't load the page fully. They wait for page to be constructed completely and then only display. That increases customers' time to view the page, but when they interact with it, the page seems very faster. So there is a balance to be made there. So these are the 2 examples I'd like to share.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Yeah, I like that.
The whole web. Yeah, I was going to just add to Harry. There's excellent points by the. I was going to add the whole kind of the web performance area is a bit of a magic. A lot of it is about is not really about actual speed. It's a perceived speed, right? And there's a lot of kind of tricks around that to kind of give what the person feels like rather than the actual metrics. Because but it's coming back to the original question, when I saw this, I said, well, I never seen anybody complain because app is too fast. But I mean, there are aspects of like you say, that the unintended consequences of doing something, or
Yeah.
or spending time, or we think we need to improve the speed of this particular component to improve the overall speed, and not having an effect. And then you're in a situation, an egg on your face, where we spent all this time fixing this thing because we're going to fix everything, and it didn't. So there is that sort of scenario where it kind of complex systems, it's not so obvious always what the area is that has the biggest impact.
Yeah. And often we look at it from a customer's perspective, don't we? So we want it to, for the customer, we want it to respond within X second or whatever. But then that means every layer of the architecture has got to respond in a certain time frame to allow that to even happen. So once you make the request, everything else has got to be just as quicker, if not quicker. And then obviously, if it can't render the page quick enough, then you've got a different problem.
Yeah, it's like an onion with a lot of peels. There's a looking at just even from the customer's device perspective, there's a lot of things that need to go right for it to have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads us on to a question from Oliver. He says, as devices generally get more powerful as time goes on, will performance engineering stop being such a concern for simple applications and web pages? Will it have diminishing return?
In my opinion,
Harry, you want to go?
I was just saying, in my opinion, when we talk about simple applications, most of the time, those applications fall under the category where we don't need to manage performance, because by nature, not much things going on the application, hence performance is probably not required and monitoring is sufficient. But let's talk about, let's say, e-commerce website where the speed does matter. So let's say if devices are getting faster and faster, but all the devices, they still need to connect to CDN. And as Stuart and Tommy, you both mentioned around every layer needs to respond faster. Device is just one element of it, right? So from front-end point of view, from responsiveness point of view, yes, it will get faster, it will get better. But from page load perspective, or fetching the HTML from, let's say, CDN, then backend and so on, that still needs that still requires performance management. But having said that, let's say the device is faster, and the web application, instead of sending one request for particular operation, we are sending 10 requests. The device is still going to cater for it, but the inefficiency is still going to lead to the same problem that we talked about of running the application, or cost of running the application, and so on. So there will be still inefficiency. So performance will be still required, but responsiveness will be better.
Just another thing to add to is, as the devices get more powerful, we'll find functionality to build to take advantage of that. It's like a new Xbox console or PlayStation. We'll find something to do that, and if you don't, your competition will, and then you have to copy them. So I think that there will always be kind of a way to use that power, I think.
That's a really good point. It's like us living to our means, isn't it? We do the same. We would do the same thing. If we've got that power there, we're going to use it.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point.
They did.
And so there's a question from Ben, and this is more about kind of speed and time to release. But I want to put a little spin on this, because he's basically what Ben was saying is he's worked in contexts where releases were scheduled annually and delays were in 6-month chunks if deadlines were missed. By the time I left the company, they'd gone agile and were delivering every 3 months. Some of their customers would still stick to year-old versions and pay for extended support rather than upgrades. He then says, question, I get there in the end. Are frequent updates welcomed by customers? have you seen customers be fearful, dismissive, or generally negative about having to upgrade? So just framing that slightly differently, because when you're looking at things from a performance perspective, if you've got all these different versions of applications or software products that you're having to support, how does that play into the general complexity of what you're having to do and what you're having to think about? So if, for example, we say, well, we're going to support 10 versions of this application because our customers don't want to upgrade, that must have a big effect on ensuring that all those different applications can perform in the right way and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's more work for us, right? The more things we need to cover, the more scripts or tests we need to do. It's essentially the same for any kind of quality assurance, right? If you have a mobile device and 15 different screen types, and it just adds complexity. And in particularly in performance engineering, quite a lot of our testing is risk-based. We won't be able to test absolutely everything that you build. There'll be some risk introduced by that. We might not test the guy who has only one of the devices that nobody uses, type of thing. So you might not get as much coverage as the most common devices. So there's definitely an element of that. But this is, again, going back to the observability aspect, is obviously we can monitor that in real life. We can monitor that when people are actually using it, so that we can get some kind of context around that from that side. So that's one, coming back to the point, is that I'm hoping that side of things will get more established and can assume some of the responsibility.
Yeah. And just coming back to your point about we wouldn't test on that device if it was only one person using it. I'm sure we would if it was the CEO.
Well, yeah, and that has happened.
So, and that's the risk-based thing, isn't it? So, just I guess one other thing then, just on that question, Tomi, with regards to Ben talking about the time frame to release and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Years gone by, performance testing would be done kind of like towards the end of a build, and like we've got we've now got a big we've got the build, we've deployed it, it's all functionally working, now go and do the performance testing. But that's shifted a lot over recent years, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how has that sort of played out in terms of changing the dynamic and approach, and I guess building performance testing into sort of the delivery or an iterative testing that we now do?
Yeah, I mean, that's been like a fundamental change of approach. I think some places where they do agile development otherwise, they still often have a kind of tendency of testing the performance at the end as a kind of waterfall approach. But as we are moving towards that aspect, I think I think one important part of it is that there's a lot more change. So one person is going to get more spread out thin. So responsibility has to be shared. So nowadays, engineers and rest of the kind of team pick up some of this work, because it won't be kind of possible for one person to test all of these little things and all of the releases, type of thing. So I think the responsibility has been shared, and that's definitely an aspect that's quite different. Typically, you have that one person who's building the test in the old way, but now that is a more shared responsibility. I wanted to answer Ben's question, by the way. The question is how people feel about the frequent change. I think most of us are against change by nature, unless the change has value. I think it's really a question about the value, what does it bring to you. If you have a new, I don't know, on your phone or whatever, you have an update to your app, and now you can do this and that and this and that. Yeah, brilliant, amazing. But in general, we don't like change. I think that's quite common. And where I wanted to kind of draw it back to is Amazon online shop. If you look at Amazon online shop, it fundamentally looks the same as it did when it launched, type of thing.
Yeah.
But under the bonnet, the amount of engineering that is being put into it is incredible. But so it's about familiarity. I think people in general like more or less the same thing, maybe some couple other things, but not changing fundamentally. So I think I completely agree with Ben. So I wanted to answer that question because
I
thought
tell
he
you
was
what,
very
Tomi.
passionate about it.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, but go and listen to or watch the previous episode where we're talking about change and navigating change. That might help you.
Yeah, okay, I will do.
I certainly empathize with Ben as well, but I just wanted to add one thing, probably not related to performance, but nowadays, most of the enterprises really want to make sure that their systems are running on the latest version, primarily because of the security. In past, we had security vulnerabilities, but they were probably not as exploited as now they are being exploited. So most of the enterprise, they genuinely aspire to kind of run on the latest version where security is top notch. So hopefully that helps. Not performance related answer, but security might be the answer.
That's a good point.
It's a very good point. Very good point. One last question then, and it's another one from Chris. So, what piece or pieces of advice would you give to somebody who was wanting to embark on a career in performance engineering, starting out at their first role versus somebody transitioning from, say, a quality or engineering background?
I think being curious is definitely one of the top things that person should have, and be adaptable as well, because performance engineering is something where you need to probably understand wider variety of technology stack rather than just like one stack. Because if that stack might be okay today, tomorrow you might be called in to work on different stack. And apart from this too, customer first, or when we kind of say customer, like end user first, keep the end user in mind. What do they need? And try to um, find a way to fulfill their requirement from speed or speed perspective and so on. So these are probably three things I would say if somebody is looking to get into performance engineering. These are the three traits that you should have. And then obviously any experience or any skill within programming definitely helps.
Good advice.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of things. I think I'll put the negatives out there first. Because this job doesn't really have a normal career progression. There are not many layers to it. So if you're a career-oriented person, it's maybe not the right thing. But on the kind of the reasons like why I like the job is like what Harry was saying, the curiosity. If you were the person who was when you were a kid, you're always asking why does this work like that? Why is it like this? Why is it not like that? This is quite a good, interesting career potentially. I quite like the autonomy that we have, and if you're a person who needs a lot of stimulation and gets bored easily, this is also another good career choice, I think, in that way. But I think anybody who is willing to put in the effort, because it's a lot of work. We are kind of jacks of all trades. There's a lot to cover. So you need to put a lot of effort in. I would think probably the best way is like Harry, you had like proper training. I had some proper training type of thing. But a lot of it is learn from other people. So if you have a mentor, if you have a person who's doing this role already, kind of pairing up with you type of thing, I think that's probably the best approach, because there aren't any books and YouTube tutorials I could recommend and that do this and you'll be fine type of thing. It's a very, very long journey. It's a bit like a craft rather than a typical kind of very well structured plan type of thing. So, but it is very enjoyable job, I find. It's it keeps your curiosity kind of piqued, and you get involved in all kinds of, like Harry say, you do one thing today and next week, oh, by the way, I need your mobile device next week. So that's a lot of variety into the job. It's very different from this kind of typical feature developer role where this is the feature, go and do it, and then next one and next one. It's a very different way of working. I don't think it matters whether you have a QA background or engineering. You have different strengths if you come from engineering and different strengths if you come from QA. But you need to want to do this job. It's not something, I wouldn't recommend it as a kind of, if you're not really into it. I think you have to enjoy the aspects that are hard in the job to do it.
Yeah, I agree, Tommy, what you mentioned. I think when I mentioned around programming, I think it is more around that logical thinking. I think that's the right way of putting it. If you have logical thinking, then programming is also like easily understood and so on. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
I would say probably, if you have engineering background, it's probably a bit easier just because of the technical tasks are easier. You will struggle with some other aspects. I think that the nature of that job is it's not very black and white, and that's often for engineers quite difficult to get their heads around. There is a lot of gray areas, and that could be more difficult.
Yeah. Where do you say? I mean, I'm assuming like data analysis again would be a skill, or if you're interested in data analysis, you guys churn through a lot of data and and trying to figure out what it all means, right? So the running the test is the easy bit, the writing the test is the easier bit. It's then analyzing those results. So I'm guessing that's another skill or trait, let's say, that fits really well within this type of role.
100%,
and
right?
it's something you'll get better. Yeah. I mean, it is something that the more you do it, it's like anything, right? The more you do it, it becomes more natural. But it can be quite daunting. But yeah, anything to do with data analysis would be you have the experience. I mean, if you like Excel or kind of advanced Excel, you might like the stuff we do. Yeah.
But Stuart
Don't put
mentioned
everybody off, Tommy. What are you doing?
Maybe we get some accountants, maybe.
But I just wanted to go a little bit more deeper what Stuart mentioned, because it is a really good point. Data analysis is definitely a key aspect of the role and how it helps, right? So data analysis leads to data visualization. I believe the most complex part in performance engineering is to explain others, this is the performance issue, and this is how it is impacting a business process or customers and so on. And that is where data analysis, data visualization kind of really aid you in that conversation. As Tommy mentioned, sometimes people are difficult, right? Dealing with people are difficult, but having this toolkit with you kind of makes the conversation much easier.
Yeah,
that's definitely a skill to be able to convey all this very technical stuff into digestible but correct information.
Yeah. So the art of storytelling comes into that, doesn't it, as well, in terms of being able to tell that story and to all different levels of people. Yeah, you could be talking to the CEO, or you could be talking to your product manager, or
that's another thing I wanted to say about the job is you go through the layers. You can be talking to an engineer in the morning and then talking to executive in the afternoon. It's totally or marketing, product. So that's I quite enjoy that personally.
That's a really good point, Tommy. Actually, you connect with a multitude of people throughout the business, don't you? Because of the nature of what you're looking at. I mean, so any budding performance engineers out there, if you want to know more, get in touch with Tommy or Harry.
Yes,
and
I'm happy to. Honestly, happy to. I never met a performance engineer I don't get along with. It's
because there's only two of you. You two.
That's probably why.
No, definitely. Yeah.
There's a certain mentality attached.
Perfect. And one of the questions I was going to ask actually was, can you point people to any resources, and then we would link them in the show notes and stuff. But you mentioned there, Tommy, there isn't really many out there. But if people do want to know more, they can reach out and stuff. I know you've got a few videos on YouTube, Tommy, and stuff like that. And Harry, you've done some webinars before, so there is stuff out there. but it's not rich in information, is it?
Yeah, I think it's typically they are kind of the people. I personally learn by doing. I would say download an app, whatever, some sort of load testing app, have a go. I think that you need a lot of that in our job. There's a lot of kind of self-learning and figuring out stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think it's very difficult to give an advice, to be honest, somebody who's very, very early in the career, if you don't have a mentor. I think that would be my first suggestion is if you have somebody in your team is doing this job, say shadow them a little bit, see how they do it, and you learn lots more.
Yeah,
I agree with
good
that
advice
as well, Tommy. Figuring out on our own, but then having mentor definitely helps. I was just also surfing through LinkedIn at some point, and I think there might be a book or two coming in on performance engineering in near future, or it might have been already published. So if I find that book is already published, I might post a link there as well.
I think probably there are some books. Yeah. So I'm not. I don't want to discount that there is nothing worth reading or investigating that. But I wouldn't know actually. In all fairness, to know the right thing. It's a little. What I did find actually useful, and I would say that is when I did my original training for the tool, the load runner tool, that was very useful. I did find that put the fundamentals of script writing itself in place. That was quite useful. So there could be some kind of that sort of tool level training that would be useful. Yes.
Yeah, because it kind of brings context to things as well, doesn't it? Yeah. So
and there is a kind of a lot of this stuff is kind of unwritten, but there is like a common industry standard. So how do you write a script? How do you do transaction? How do you name them? How do you build a ramp ups and that sort of thing? So that you would learn that, which are often if you have an engineer that had the displeasure or pleasure to write a performance test because there was not a performance engineering team, they will miss that because they kind of made it up and they use the tool, but that fundamentals are missing. So I think the training or that sort of thing is probably useful. And it's fairly straightforward once you get it. But if you haven't got it, you will just make it up and it probably won't look like a real test.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. And look, guys, we're gonna wrap this up now because we could keep talking for a long time, right? But if you do go away and you find any books or anything, then obviously just send them my way and I can link them in the show notes and we can share them and stuff. I'll share both your LinkedIn profiles as well on the show notes as well, so people can get in touch should they want to learn more. But it's been great having you both on. As I say, I've learned so much from both of you over the years. I owe you both a lot. So, I appreciate you both and I appreciate you coming on this evening. And let's hope Black Friday for your worlds, at least, is stable. And, what's the word I'm looking for? I hope we haven't jinxed it. Yeah. So, perfect.
There'll be a lot of LinkedIn posts tomorrow about meltdowns. So
yes,
we can read those.
Yeah. But by the time this goes out, it'll be in the past.
Oh,
so
that's
nobody will care. So anyway.
I gave it away.
So look, thanks again for joining, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everyone, I hope you've had a really great time listening and watching this episode with Tommy and Harry. I'm sure you'll agree they're experts in their field, so it's been great to have them both on and share their history and their knowledge with everyone. As always, keep sharing the comments onto our LinkedIn page, share feedback on every episode that we have, and join us next time for another episode of Quality Talks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.